An aha moment for me that was powerful was when I realized it's possible that I don't achieve my goals. And this
Wow.
happened recently over the course of this injury. And I mentioned that there was that kind of thought process of like, oh, I could just start coaching, I could do this and that. It's so important to have a self-belief and truly visualizing and believing that you can accomplish something and having an intrinsic optimism. But I remember it occurring to me that it's possible that I don't achieve my goals. It's possible that I don't reach the pinnacle that I have always striven for. And the reason that I wouldn't do that is because of me and not because I'm not good enough. I think I have a very talented potential, but I also see every day the shortcomings of if I don't do the things that I know that I could do, if I'm not disciplined with my recovery, if I don't really push myself with training, if I chose to smoke instead of doing cardio, like, oh, there's all these forks in the road, and every day there's different forks, and it's like fractal geometry, the way it just expands. And
Hmm.
your minute by minute, day by day choices are what make you a champion. One of the things that I preach to my athletes, and they'll hear me say this over and over again, is champions are not made on competition day. Champions are made in the training room. Champions are made by your minute by minute choices. When the tough guy looks at you, do you look away and find someone lighter to roll with, or do you take the champion and take your ass whooping? Do you get up and run in the morning, or do you get up and like hit snooze? Do you come home and jump in the sauna, or do you come home and grab the potato chips? It's all those minute by minute examples and choices that create your path. And I remember when I realized that it's possible that I don't accomplish these things. And if that happens, the only reason it would happen is because the guy in the mirror. And that really shook me up and helped me lock my mindset back in and get dialed back in like I feel right now.
Welcome to Forever White Belt. I'm your host, Adolfo Ferranda. In today's episode, I give you Clay Mayfield. Clay Mayfield is a Pedigo Submission Fighting black belt under Heath Pedigo. He also trains Judo under Travis Stevens. In this conversation, Clay shares his journey from a homeschooled child to a black belt in Jiu-Jitsu and the founder of Triangle Academy. He discusses the importance of finding the right training environment, the evolution of his martial arts training, and the challenges he faced along the way, including injuries and the balance between competition and running a business. Clay emphasizes the significance of community, support, coaching, and creating a positive training culture for aspiring athletes. In this conversation, Clay discusses the intricacies of building a successful jiu-jitsu program, the importance of life skills beyond the mat, and the distinctions between coaching and instructing. He emphasizes the significance of training consistently, the role of nutrition, and the evolution of young talent in the sport. Clay also shares insights on belting criteria, the impact of judo on jiu-jitsu, and the importance of commitment in training, all while reflecting on his personal journey and aspirations. And with that, I give you Clay Mayfield. Clay, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's put it in a nutshell. Clay Mayfield, born in Texas, raised all over the world, basically. A lot of people don't know this. 2 siblings, I believe. Homeschooled, trained all over at an old Gracie Academy, let's say, and then moved to Pedigo Submission Fighting. You run a school in Franklin, Tennessee, I believe, called Triangle Academy. You are a Heath Pedigo black belt. All right. So is that kind of a sum up?
That's a great summation. One correction: I have 9 siblings. I'm one of 10.
And your parents what did they do if they retired, or what do they do? Because I think they're pretty educated from what I remember.
In a quick nutshell, I was born in Dallas, Texas. I was the second sibling, so I have an older brother, and then I was number 2. I was the beta version, and I guess they kept going until they got it right. So when I was 4, my dad joined medical school. So my dad was a pretty exceptional person. He was a high school dropout, as I understand, owned a dirt working company where he would haul loads of dirt. When I was about 2 years old, he traded four dump trucks of dirt for an Isuzu pickup truck that he drives to this day. He put himself through night college. My mom helped him from when he didn't know what a negative number was all the way through graduating pre-med and college. And then he put himself through medical school. And a little later in life, probably in his late 20s or 30s, decided to take that journey. And at that point, I'd already started having kids. And to this day, I'm not entirely clear why we moved so much. I think it was some kind of traveling residency where he got to do parts of his credit at different institutions.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was 4, we moved to the Caribbean. We lived in St. Martin, which is a half Dutch, half French island. We lived on the Dutch side and lived there for almost 2 years, and then moved to Belize and lived in Central America for an extended time, and then moved to England for a year. And when we were living in England, we took several trips over to mainland Europe. My family is German, and so we got to see, kind of trace our historic roots and see our heritage there.
Amazing.
Those early trips made a huge impression on me as a person. It's one of the reasons that I enjoyed traveling so much with my jiu-jitsu career. And then we ended up moving back and moving all over the States. And by the time I was in my early teens, about 12 or 13, we settled in rural Kentucky, a few hours north of Nashville. And that was when my dad moved on into his practice, and also where we started training jiu-jitsu. A few years later, we found a martial arts gym. We started training, ended up being a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gym. And that was the start of the journey. And then several iterations of the journey later, I'm here in Tennessee.
Yeah, and you've done a ton of martial arts, I know, as a kid too, prior to even jujitsu. And I believe you're currently under Travis Stevens with your judo as well, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct. So I started I did a little bit of things here and there. So we were homeschooled growing up and traveling around all those countries and states. So we didn't get to play any established sports or team sports, but we do a kickboxing class here or something there. My mom and dad actually met in Taekwondo class when they were 17. So it kind of runs in my blood, I suppose. And growing up, my mom and dad, we didn't have a TV until I was 12 or 13. So we grew up reading books and so forth. But whenever we would go to the doctor's office and watch the TV, it would be like Walker, Texas Ranger or Jackie Chan movies or something like that. And so we were enamored with martial arts. And when we finally settled down in Kentucky and were in one place long enough to look into something like that, we found a gym, and it ended up being a jiu-jitsu gym. And so at that time, that gym trained or taught several different disciplines, and I trained all of them for several years. Some Jeet Kune Do, which is Bruce Lee's style of kickboxing, Filipino Kali and Eskrima, stick and knife fighting, a little bit of Muay Thai, and then Judo and Jiu-Jitsu were the main things. And there was an interesting style of jiu-jitsu. I wouldn't put it as a very high level club, but it was what got my feet wet and got the journey started, and then everything went from there. So yes, long answer to your question. I have trained around in many things and gravitated toward the grappling. Really made a career out of the jiu-jitsu. And a little bit later in my career, just in these last few years, I've been blessed to have an incredible connection with the judo guys and have found a deep love for judo and try to train a little bit of boxing or striking just for conditioning and to be more well-rounded. But the judo and the jiu-jitsu and the wrestling are where it's at for me.
Just a reminder to please give us a 5-star review on Apple Music and Spotify and become a VIP member for only 99 cents a month. Get ad-free episodes at anchor.fm/foreverwhitebelt/subscribe. And check us out on Instagram at Forever White Belt Show. Go buy your Forever White Belt swag at teespring.com/forever-white-belt. Check us out on YouTube now at Forever White Belt. Finally, if you ever get to beautiful Northern California, please come roll with us at North Bay Jiu-Jitsu in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. They're amazing instructors and everyone there are great people. Mention the podcast and get 2 weeks free. One of the things that I've heard you touch on that many of us experience is when we go into a jiu-jitsu academy, evaluating, trying to find the right fit. And in terms of our growth within the years or within various academies and when things can change. For instance, when I moved into this county that I live in now, I had a little bit of experience in another city where, I went to a couple academies and then I realized, what I don't want, right? And so when I moved to this new academy, I went and visited these various places which either sort of resonated with me or didn't. And they all have their different flavors, so to speak. And I landed upon the one that I'm at now that I really like. Now, I know you mentioned that, you started at a different type of academy, different type of martial arts systems too. So you learned, things like what sort of resonates with you, what may work and not work, quote unquote. And outgrowing somewhere, your goals change. And you get a wake up call that, hey, maybe something else is a little more enticing. Can you talk about that journey and that sort of mindset and evolution?
Absolutely. And I would love to caveat this by saying that there have been a lot of bumps in the road, so to speak, and I am happy to be open about them and share things that I've done, I would say, not understood correctly, maybe what I was looking for, so forth. And there's other things that were just genuinely not well done or poorly taught and so forth. But with everything that has happened in my past, I am grateful for all of it. I think it's all led me to where I am today in my life, and I count it all as a blessing, even if some of them were well-hidden blessings. So having said that, yeah, the story that we're hinting at here, when I started martial arts, other than some random classes here and there as I was growing up, when I actually started my discipline, it was at a Gracie gym. And many of us in the jiu-jitsu community understand that the Gracie family has a bit of a chip on their shoulder, that they brought this art to, revolutionize it and created jiu-jitsu and all this stuff that is complete bullshit. And I highly recommend people read Opening the Closed Guard by Robert Drysdale. Robert, as a career historian as well as a jiu-jitsu champion, has a great perspective on the nuance of history, and he's done a tremendous amount of research. And all credit to the Gracies. If their family hadn't done what they did, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. So not to take any credit away from them, but I feel that it's very disingenuous to misrepresent parts of the story that they've done very well over the years. And so I started at a Hoist Gracie gym, and I was a 15-year-old homeschooled kid that never played a basketball game or a sport in his life. And so I had no idea what I was looking at. And I came in and saw a jiu-jitsu program and a kickboxing program, and it was professional. It was the coolest thing ever. And I am immensely grateful for the coaches that built that and so forth. So I don't want to be talking down about anyone. But the fact of the matter is, it was a very self-defense based gym. And from the moment I started until I left 8 years later, it was a culture of, we don't compete, we don't do tournaments. Here's a technique that, if someone grabs you in a bear hug or tries to stab you with a knife, here's what you do. And it was a whole syllabus of curriculum about that. And we were actively discouraged from training with wrestlers or, there was a judo program, ironic because judo is an Olympic sport, but they would really talk down about any kind of competitive outlet. We were allowed to go do small tournaments, but it was highly discouraged. It was kind of shit on in class. We always started from the knees. And the irony of it is that that old school kind of mentality, and I don't want to paint all the colors as if they're the same. So there's a wide gradient of self-defense approach in jiu-jitsu, but in my understanding and my experience in that world, most of the time when someone markets themselves as like a self-defense gym or self-defense coach, it's just a synonym for absolute bullshit, because most of the time they're not getting punched in the face, or they're not putting the gloves on and putting it to the test. They're just running through almost like a kata of here's an idea of what it might be like. And no one's actually tried this with resistance in the last 30 years. It's just how my grandfather taught it, how my father taught it, in that branch. So we taught for years and years. We were taught and ended up teaching, as I became a coach, all this self-defense stuff. Someone who had never been in a street fight, at that point, never been in a cage fight, never really put the gloves on and tried to even box. But I was, making a career out of teaching people how to defend themselves. It's a little false. And then at the same time, we were getting promoted right and left. It was the culture of, you show up to the seminar every year when the Gracie comes into town. It was Hoist in that case. You show up to the seminar, you pay $100. He teaches a couple hours of techniques that everyone already knows, and you get your belt or your promotion, whether you've been training once every 3 weeks or 3 times a day. And so it was a very one size fits all kind of a money racket, what we might call a McDojo now. But the funny thing is that they would at the same time paint the picture of the inverse picture about the competitive gyms. They would say, oh, we don't want to train with them because they only care about scoring points, or if you try that, you get beat up in a fight. And to that point, I taught and trained that for many years, for about 8 years. I got through my blue, purple, brown belt under the Gracies, and I was starting to do some local tournaments and getting mollywopped, but was one of the only people that would go compete. Mm-hmm. And then I found the Pedigo Submission Fighting team that I'm a part of now. Mm-hmm. And they were a group of hardcore dudes that were sleeping on the mats. And this was even before we were in the Daisy Fresh building. It was just in a roll-up garage door with some old wrestling mats behind a Hardee's. And they were white and blue belt kids that had just won the world championships. They'd all gone out to California and won the Worlds or Pan Ams for the first time. And I got invited to come up to their open mat when our coach, who gave me my black belt, who was at the time a purple belt, I think I actually was a higher rank than he was. And I rolled with one of their guys who had just gotten his blue belt, and his name was Andrew Wiltse. Of course, it's a name most of us know. But at the time, he was a nobody, and he tapped me maybe 20 times in a 5-minute round. And I literally couldn't believe it. I was in disbelief. And he passed my guard so many times, I couldn't ever put him in my closed guard or get connections. And it was just an intense competition training, but it was completely foreign to me. And I had gotten almost a black belt and never experienced that. I was bewildered, and I drove home and told my Gracie coach, what happened? These guys beat the crap out of me. And I was fed a perspective of, oh, well, they're just scoring points. If it was a street fight, that wouldn't have mattered. And in the back of my head, I was thinking, well, he could have started hitting me anytime he wanted. He was completely dominating me positionally. The points didn't really matter. And so I started training a little bit with the more competitive teams in the area, particularly the Pedigo team. And I got a lot of resistance from my gym. It wasn't a open culture of we can train with anyone. When the Pedigo guys came down to our gym one time, my coach tried to embarrass them and put them on the spot and ask self-defense questions and make them look like silly fellas. It was just a very weird perspective once I started to kind of see how the competitiveness in the actual sport was being treated. And we would also make fun of like wrestlers and people like that came in competing. I remember like Hoist Gracie, one of the guys that I trained with, got tied in pretty closely with Bo Nickel and the USA wrestling guys, and built a big wrestling facility for his kids. And Bo Nickel would come in and run clinics or something like that. And Hoist would teach like some hands on the shoulders, elbow to the back of the head defense to a double leg takedown. It's like you have an Olympic level wrestler here and you're trying to, tell me you're going to knee him in the face and elbow in the back of the head and like defend his.
Right.
Well, the delusion was crazy. But over several years, I came up under that Gracie system, and it was just super self-defense only. We don't train with other gyms. We start rolling from the knees. We never try to hit each other. We're just kind of pretending and selling the belts at the seminars and all that kind of stuff, and a whole lot of other shit. It was a culture as a young man that I came up in, and I saw all the coaches sleeping with all the students, and like families breaking up, and just all this horrible stuff that I try really hard not to have in my gym now. But that was part of the whole medley. And when I went to exit, and to be fair, I'm sure I didn't carry myself the right way. I was an awkward homeschool kid. I probably wasn't fun to be around and, like stuck my foot in my mouth a lot. So I wasn't a perfect player in the situation. But when I got to be in my early 20s and had seen enough that I knew I wanted to go open my own gym, and I was looking around at where to do it, I was torn between opening a Gracie gym and opening my own affiliate. At that point, I didn't even consider joining Pedigo. I just felt like maybe there was something I needed to do on my own.
You joined Pedigo as what, a purple belt?
I was a brown belt.
Brown belt? Okay.
So I was about to get my black belt under the Gracies, was very close to that point. And so there's the enticement of that and, the familiarity we've always been with. And also my financial backer. I'd saved a bit of money to open, and then I had a financial backer who was one of the Gracie guys as well. And so when I had actually found the building that my gym is in here in Franklin and was about to move in, and then decided to not join the Gracie gym. And they immediately cut ties and told me to go screw myself. And, it was,
Wow.
it just kind of, it was validating that I made the right choice. There was a little interim in there when I was training with the PSF guys, and I would go up and train once a week and still be coaching at the Gracie gym. And I did that for about 6 months and got a lot of resistance from my gym because they just had big egos about it and didn't like the one of their coaches was learning somewhere else. And I noticed that I was getting so much better learning these basics. I mean, I was a brown belt that didn't know what an X pass was, or didn't know you barely knew what spider guard was, because these were all like sports stuff. I could barely do a single leg takedown. Like, they're the basics of our sport. And so I figured, I learned that in about 8 months of training with the PSF guys once or twice a week, I had gotten better than I had in 8 years at the other gym. And that was what helped bolster my decision to switch. And so I ended up switching gyms before I opened Triangle, and ended up becoming a Pedigo affiliate. And now we're the Pedigo Submission Fighting down in Nashville, Tennessee, just outside Nashville.
So I imagine that you had to do quite a bit of catch up then when you went to Pedigo, as a brown belt, we'll say, right? How did you climb that mountain?
That was a big hill to climb, because being completely honest, I had the perception, that the people around me at those Gracie gyms, would always kind of talk about the PSF guys like they were sandbaggers, like they were, white belts that were getting held back for years. And when I actually started training with them, I realized that this guy's only been a white belt for a year. He's just really good, and he trains 3 times a day, or twice a day or something. And in my estimation, there's very little actual sandbagging in jiu-jitsu. It certainly happens sometimes, I'm sure, but I've rarely ever seen it. I think most sandbagging is just people getting beaten by people that are better than them and getting their panties in a wad about it. And of course, there is some sandbagging, but that was certainly the case with the PSF team, and the stigma around that Kentucky, Illinois area was everyone thought they were sandbaggers, and they just trained harder than everyone else. And so, to your point, when I was a brown belt and I started cross training over there, I lived an hour and a half away. So I would drive an hour and a half to practice, train for 2 hours, drive an hour and a half back. And I would cry on the way home. As a grown-ass man, I'd be 22, 24 years old. I'd be in tears on the way home because I didn't understand how I sucked that much after I'd trained for almost 10 years. I couldn't score a single point on anyone in the ring, the white belts or the black belts or anyone. I don't think there were any black belts at that point. But I couldn't score a single point on anyone, and I got mollywopped for about 2 years. And then it started to catch up with me, and the training I was putting in and all the holes that I was filling in my game started to accelerate. And then I started getting a little more success competing. I was a brown belt for about 5 years because I was under the Gracies for several years. And then I switched over, and I asked Heath, I said, I know I can't go back in rank, but I also know that I'm not the level of like a competitive brown belt. So I'll stay here as long as you want. Just teach me and help me suck a little less every day. It was a long road to hoe, but we got there.
Wow, guest, that was really interesting. But did you know throughout history, salt has been highly valued and commonly used as currency? Warriors and sailors were sometimes given rations of salt for their wages. If they were worthy, they were said to have earned their salt. Salt Electrolytes drink mix is designed for today's warriors, athletes, and those who get after it and work up a sweat regularly. If you're eating healthy, drinking plenty of water, and working out, you need to replenish your electrolytes. With a light, refreshing flavor, salt is great to drink during your workout because it will not coat your mouth with a thick film. Salt contains 6 different electrolytes, with a touch of iodine to help maintain a healthy thyroid. No sugar, no color, no BS. Go earn your salt. And on top of that, if you use code FWB, how much should we give you off? 5%? 10%? Nah, 15%, just because we're friends. Now go get it. Salt Electrolytes. How'd you start believing in yourself?
There's a video on YouTube of me getting my black belt when Heath came down. It was the 3-year anniversary of my gym here in Franklin. The team came down and surprised me with my black belt. And I had an emotional moment after he tied it on me and I was giving my speech and I was trying to keep it together. And one of the things I said that answers your question is I said that Heath and Alejandro and Andrew and that core group of training partners in those early days, they kept encouraging me to come back and telling me, you're almost there. Don't quit. You're getting better. And they really believed in me until I could believe in me. I just had such little self-confidence, and it was well-founded because I was getting the shit beat out of by everyone, but they could see that potential, and they nurtured that like a seed and grew it until I could start to believe in myself. And that has been one of the most transformational coaching experiences that I've been a part of.
Amazing. It's like a proxy belief, you know what I mean?
I think a good coach does that. And that's what I try to do for my students. A good coach will believe in you more than you believe in you until you start to see it for yourself.
You're one of these super interesting guys in that you're an elite level competitor. I've watched you just have incredible results and your competitions are fantastic. But when I realized you're also an entrepreneur and you have your life, typically those things don't click all that great together. So there's always some give and take in these type of situations. Being a professional competitor and a professional entrepreneur, where is the give and where is the take there?
Man, that's a great question. I'll say that my journey, I'm 32 now, and I'll say my journey in the last year and a half or so since I've turned 30 has really been about finding the routine and the balance and the discipline in life. And Jocko is really onto something. Discipline does equal freedom. I look back in my 20s and I think, what the fuck were you doing with your time? like you thought you were busy. You were not busy. And I don't have kids yet, but I hear from parents that that's the perspective when you become a parent is like, oh, what did I do with my time? Because I have none of it now. And I'm very regimented with my time, and I don't mean that in a way where I feel shackled. It feels liberating to be disciplined with what I do in the morning and have my routines down and have my quiet time and my time for my business and my coaches and then my training. And your schedule reveals your priorities. And it's been a big balancing act for me to decide what irons I have in the fire and what to prioritize. And as the business grows, what to delegate. And one example of that I would say is I do something that I call my morning disciplines. So every day I want to be completely truthful. It may not be every day, but I shoot for 5 or 6 days a week. Every day I read. I try to read about half an hour. I journal, sometimes about my training, sometimes about what I'm doing that day or my relationships, kind of stream of consciousness, what's on my heart. And I study language. So I'm learning a couple languages right now. And that all 3 of those are deep passions of mine, is developing myself as a person and the journaling and reflecting on who I am and kind of getting to know yourself and having a good reality check. Reading, I read a wide variety of subjects, everything you can think of. And I also try to challenge my beliefs and read perspectives that I don't necessarily espouse just to see the complete picture. And then language. I enjoy being someone that's multilingual. It's important to my core values. And so that triad of things that I make myself take time for, about an hour and 15 minutes every day, I turn my phone off and I just immerse myself in my quiet time. And taking the time to nurture myself and build myself like one step closer into who I want to be every day feeds me to invest in other people. And I find that when I'm busy or I'm traveling or something and something throws my routine off for a few days, you get this unsettledness, or I get this unsettledness of like something's kind of itchy in my soul. I need to take that quiet time and just get my roots back down. And so that's been one thing that's been tremendously impactful for me, is that quiet time. And then other examples like that throughout my day, getting my routines down where every day I'm stepping toward becoming who I want to be in my career as an athlete, in my relationship, in my personal life, in my entrepreneurship, and so on.
as a competitive athlete, I think sometimes the word selfish sometimes gets a bit of a bad rap in that respect, that in order to be the best, you really, let's face it, you do need to be selfish, right? You need to focus on your, your training and in a way studying yourself, study your film and all this kind of stuff that people can construe as selfish, sometimes at the detriment of other people or other relationships or what may be. But also you have this other side where I've heard you say that in terms of the business, and perhaps this was just endemic of the time where you said, I I love business. In terms of your own business, which I can empathize with too. Can you talk about those two sort of concepts?
Absolutely. So, firstly, I would say to answer your last question first about the business, when I opened the gym, I quickly learned that you were not allowed to say, I don't know how to do that. I opened the gym and had no help and no one teaching classes, no one running the front desk, no one running the Facebook ads, no one fixing the toilet in the back. And if I didn't know how to do something, it didn't get done. So you find a YouTube video, you find a book to read, you find someone to ask who's been there. You can't say, I don't know how to do that. And the buck stops with you. And that was one of the best lessons that I've learned in the business that carries on into, my family life and everything else is like, you be a go-getter. You have to get this done because the ship stops with you. And when I opened the gym, I figured that there are three parts or three components to running a successful gym. You have to be really good at jiu-jitsu. You have to be really good at teaching, which is completely different. And you have to be really good at the business. And most people open the gym because they're good at one of those things. Maybe someone wants to make money and they love the business side and they open a business, but they suck at jiu-jitsu. Or someone is a world-class competitor, but they can't teach anything. They're a horrible teacher. Or they're good at both of those things, but they have no idea how to do the business since the business doesn't succeed. And so in my estimation, you have to be good at the business, good at teaching, and good at jiu-jitsu. Or you have to be good at one of those and know your strength and then outsource the others and hire other people that are good at those. And for example, if you're a good teacher, good at jiu-jitsu, but you hate the business, you better find someone to partner with or hire that is good at the business and doesn't take the joy out of it for you, or you will be consumed by the thing that you're not good at and it'll drain the joy out of your journey.
Hmm.
And just to be truthful, I don't like to toot my own horn, but it's just a fact. I'm very good at business and I have a lot to learn. I'm always learning, but I'm very good at business. I enjoy it. I love it. I like making money. The money is the least motivating part. The money is not the driver. It's what we do. A slogan of my gym is changing lives through jiu-jitsu. And the money is a byproduct of doing what we do and doing it well and having an impact on our community. But I love making money. I love having employees. I love managing. I love teaching. I love the strategy and the ads. It's just addicting to me. I enjoy it. Love teaching. I'm a better teacher than I am competitor. And I'm pretty good at jiu-jitsu as well. And so because I have all three of those skill sets and I'm developing and deepening them, I feel like I do a uniquely good job of running a gym. And I have put my foot in my mouth plenty of times. I hope I don't eat those words, but it's one reason that I feel like the gym has had great success is that I enjoy all three of those components.
Why don't I hear more about Clay Mayfield? Why am I the guy that's out there saying, you guys got to see this guy, he's elite and all this stuff. And then he wasn't really featured all that much in the whole Daisy Fresh stuff. And I'm like, what happened to this guy? Did that get under your skin? Why don't I see Clay Mayfield instructionals all over BJJ Fanatics and your social media going crazy and all this stuff?
Sure. That's a great question. So to answer the first part first about the Daisy Fresh documentary, I was just coming on the team when that stuff happened. And I think Flow Grappling probably picked characters like when you script a movie and you pick certain characters to make the focal point of the story. And they picked the guys that were winning the most, Jacob Couch and Andrew Wiltse and George Valderas and Alejandro. And, and then the guys that were the really close-knit part of the team, like Jacob Brooks and of course Heath and those guys. And there were other big players out there. Chad Hawkins was one of the guys who was one of kind of the founding members of the group, and he's a multiple-time world champion. He didn't get a lot of spotlight, and plenty others as well. And I don't think it was a favoritism thing necessarily. It was just who was the focal point of the story at that point. And the net result was that it carried the team forward, and the rising tide raises all the ships. And so I didn't sweat it too much as far as like I got nixed or something like that. I just think the story of the team was told, and I wasn't the most winningest guy right there. I'm still not the most winningest guy. And so I'm so glad to see the spotlight that the team got. I kind of feel like if I ever haven't gotten enough spotlight or so forth, that I just need to go win more. And that's always been my attitude is just put your nose down and work harder. And then I'm so happy the team got the attention that it got. And as far as the social media and the instructionals, I definitely intend to put out some instructional soon. I've been talking to my coaches about it. I wanted to win a couple more titles at black belt. I had a really good 2023 season, finals of Pan Ams, finals of Europeans, no-gi Pans, no-gi Euros, top 16 at East Coast Trials. And then I tore my groin last year. I could barely walk the stairs, almost ripped my leg off my body.
Oh my
And
God.
so the last year has been full rehab mode. Happened last August. And so I've been 6 months of almost nothing and then about 6 months of climbing my way back up. So I lost a little momentum and I was wanting to win a big title or two at black belt and then release instructionals, but that's coming soon. And the social media, it's hard for me to do a good job putting out consistent content because of how many irons I have in the fire. So I'm trying to get a better handle on that right now, but I'm focusing more on my team and my gym right now. And I think I also probably interact with too many political posts on Instagram to get nixed by the algorithm. I think I'm probably shadow banned by the algorithm.
I want to see Clay Mayfield online, but I hear you, man. It's a lot. You're a competitor, professional athlete. You've got this burgeoning. Well, I don't think people understand like what running an academy is really like. You've got a kids program.
So I started the gym on October 1st of 2018. So we're a few days away from our 7-year anniversary. And I moved down from Kentucky. I was living about 4 hours away and was driving down to Franklin, found the building, started to build it out and moved down there to sleep in the gym and kind of like tear the walls out and put the mats down and put the showers and all that kind of thing. And then we opened the gym and I'd saved everything I had. I'd maxed out a couple cards and business loans. And then I had an investor that loaned me a couple $1,000s. And so got us off the ground. And as anyone that's opened a business or built a house or anything like that knows, it took 25% longer and cost 30% more. It was just over budget. And I think we put the mats down the night before the grand opening. And I had been running ads and I had, trying to figure everything out myself. I had no idea how to run ads or anything. I knew absolutely no one in Franklin.
Wow.
And I was a brown belt. I wasn't even a black belt. I was 25 years old. There were several gyms in the area that are to this day great gyms that had already been here 10 or 15 years. And so I was the new kid on the block. And we had a grand opening and I hoped to sign up 30 students at the grand opening. And I knew if I could do that, I could pay the first month's rent or something like that. We signed up one. And so I signed up one student instead of 30. And I remember going to sleep in the closet in the back and just looking up at the ceiling that night thinking, Clay, what have you done? and then
My God.
and then ran out of money and had no money to run ads, had no money to pay rent, had to,
Wow.
I remember messaging the landlord like in tears, writing an email that I couldn't pay rent, and he was very forgiving, and several things like that over the first few months. There were times I had to decide if I wanted to order the geese for the new students coming in or pay rent or let rent bounce that month and pay it a couple weeks later and have the geese for the new guys coming in on Monday.
My God.
You'd have like 5 kids in class and it was a great night and all those first steps that anyone who's opened a gym or business understands well. And within a couple of weeks, I ran out of money to run ads. I had no money in the business account or my personal account. And so I would go to Starbucks. There's a Starbucks about half a mile walking distance from where I'm at. So I would go to Starbucks and they had a big community table where everyone would sit together. And I would teach the morning class, and then I would come and I would bring my business books, all the Richest Man in Babylon and The Power of Broke and all these, Damon John books and everything. And I would answer the emails and just like fingers crossed, try to get some web leads or something like that. And I would make myself stay there at that community table until I gave one business card away. And so I couldn't afford to run ads, but a cup of coffee was like $2. And that was my advertising budget for the day. And I had to stay there until I gave a card out. And I met a young man who's now the head coach of our kids program. I met my future wife. I met several of our first round of students. Like I met so many of the founding group of our gym at Starbucks doing that. And I've found in hindsight, there's different kinds of marketing that you'll do when you have more time than money, and other marketing that you do when you have more money than time. And in the beginning there, I had way more time than money. I had no money, but I had time to be creative. And so one of the things that I did was I made a video of the gym, the big room in the background, and I posted it online, and I had a little money to sponsor an ad for a few weeks. And I said, look, we're giving away free birthday parties. We've got this great facility, we can do a ninja birthday party. The kid gets to cut the cake with a little samurai sword, and we, teach a little jiu-jitsu move and so forth. And if your kid is between 5 and 13, their birthday's in the next 3 months, drop a comment, we'll give them a free party. And we sold probably 12 or 15 or gave away 12 or 15 parties. And so what would happen is a mom would comment on the post and say, hey, my little Johnny would love a birthday party. I'd say, awesome, let's schedule it for this Saturday. Would Johnny like to come in on Monday and try a class for free just to kind of see what he's getting into before the party? And then he can help me teach a move to his friends.
Mm,
Awesome. So Johnny comes in. About half the time I'd sign Johnny up before the party.
wow.
New member. Then on the party, Johnny invites 20 of his friends that I've never met and I couldn't have reached. And so they're bringing in their friends. And then I recruited so many of the parents and so many of the students, like the birthday party guests. I'd give like a free guest pass in each little bag and give them a bag when they went home. And then I'd text them all the next day from their waiver and like, hey, they want to come and try a class. And we probably got most of our first 100 students, either parents at the birthday parties or guests that the kids had invited. And
Wow.
so that was a really powerful, what we call like guerrilla marketing strategy in the early
Totally.
days that helped get the gym off the ground.
You've been to your fair share of academies. And so you've seen the light and the dark side, let's say, of all these things. We often learn, like in former jobs and things like that, the type of jobs we don't want again. So maybe you've been to academies. Can you talk us about like what didn't you want your academy to be, right? With all those sort of lessons learned. And then on top of it, what kind of like ideas did you have? I've heard wonderful things about your academy, by the way, the location, Franklin, everything amazing, I hear. But can you address those sort of thoughts?
Well, I'm so glad to hear that. And I would love to host you if you're ever in town to come visit and see the gym. I had a really clear picture of what I wanted and didn't want the gym to be like because I had a few months, a summer, I would say maybe about 6 months, where I had distanced myself from the Gracie Gym. I was still affiliated in a way, but I wasn't coaching there anymore. And I was training with PSF and I was saving money to open in Franklin. And I spent much of that period traveling the world. I went to Europe a couple times and teaching in Mexico and all over the US, doing some road trips and training. And every time I would visit a gym, I had a notebook that I traveled with and I would take notes about the front desk was over here and they lined up this way for class and the sparring was like this and I liked this and I didn't like this. And after close to a year of doing that, 6 months or so, I had a very clear picture of what I didn't like and did like and what I thought I could do better. That was one reason why I wanted to open my own gym was I felt like there was an expression of myself there that I could do a better job of than some people were doing. And when I founded the gym, it had a certain identity. And as I'm sure you well know, once a gym starts to get off the ground and start moving, it becomes the identity evolves and you see what's really important to you and maybe things that weren't so important. But I really wanted a gym where people like myself that wanted to compete could have the support to do so. I came from a gym where, again, under the Gracies and the kind of Gracie mindset, discouraging competition, I would drive 8 hours to a competition. I remember driving to Oklahoma City or Tulsa a couple times from Kentucky. I would drive 8 hours and compete, hand my phone to a stranger and ask them to film my matches and then drive home and no one from my gym knew or cared that I was competing. There was no support. My coaches, I would post about, hey, I went to so-and-so and won this tournament and, hit a couple submissions and I post videos and I would tag the coaches and tag the gym and try to, like give credit to my coaches. And they wouldn't even like the post on Facebook because it would show supportive competition and they were a self-defense gym. It
Wow.
was like bonkers to me now as a coach. And so I wanted to have an environment where no one had to compete. It wasn't a mandatory requirement, but the people that wanted to push themselves and be really good could do so. I remember one story here. I was right before I ended up switching to PSF. I was driving Hoist Gracie between seminars. We were doing a round of seminars at a few gyms, and I was driving in between seminars. And he kind of cornered me in the car, and he asked me why I enjoyed competing. Because at that time I was a brown belt and I'd done some local tournaments. And I told him I just enjoy pushing myself. I enjoy testing myself against other jiu-jitsu guys. And he told me that it was okay to do that in the gym, but I was setting a bad example for my students by competing because it was not a sport, it's an art of self-defense, and his father wouldn't have liked that. And then he gave me some bullshit excuses that like if I lost, all my students would go to train at their gyms and really ridiculous stuff. But like from the horse's mouth, just got onto me for competing and told me not to do it and discouraged me. And very shortly after I left. But I wanted to foster a gym that was the opposite. And so when I opened Triangle, I decided that it was not going to be the gym for everyone. It was going to be a gym for people that wanted to push themselves and bring out the best in themselves and the people around them. And most gyms that I had been to, and to this day, most gyms in my area are focused on hobbyists. And there's nothing at all wrong with that. If you're the coach that wants to open a gym for everyday Joes, more power to you. Jiu-jitsu is great for anyone who wants to train. If they want to never compete, that's awesome. But I want to be the best in the world. And I have a lot of guys in my gym that want to be the best in the world. And we want a gym with people that want to help us get there. And so every time someone comes into my gym, whether, first phone call or when we do our introductory lesson, I tell everyone that walks through my doors, this is not the gym for everyone. There are two things I expect of you at Triangle Academy. Be a good teammate for the people around you. We're going to help everyone reach their goals. And every time you step foot on the room, I will expect your best effort. And your 100% may be different than his and different than mine, but every time you are on my mats, I expect your best effort and nothing less. And so we set the precedent early, and it doesn't matter to me if someone is a collegiate level wrestler or someone comes in and they're 200 pounds overweight. And I have both of those in class last week. Whatever your goals are and whatever your best is, just give it to me every time you step in the room and we'll get to our goals. And I was told all through my career growing up in like the self-defense gyms that no one wants to train hard and you'll scare off everyone if you have like a really tough guy in the room because he's beating everyone up. And it has been the absolute opposite. We have been the fastest growing gym in Tennessee, to my knowledge. We have 393 students this morning. We're going to
Wow.
probably break 400 students before our anniversary next week.
Wow, that's incredible.
We have adults, not masters, but adult Pans and world champions in every practice. We have a Varsity program of professional athletes that lives in the fighter house and trains full time and goes all over the world. And it has been a hardcore training gym. Of course, we have fundamentals classes and we have beginner classes, and there's definitely a procedure to how we build people up to the intensity. But that's kind of the gaslighting that goes on, is people that don't like to train hard will tell you that you can't teach people how to do that. No one wants to train hard. And the truth is that people want to push themselves. Not everyone. I've certainly sent people to other gyms that I thought were a better fit for them, or, like people have come to me and said that they weren't enjoying the training this hard, and no hard feelings at all. Let's go down the street to this gym or this gym, and, all the best to you, and hope to see you around and encourage you and love you. But this gym is for people that want to push themselves. And so many people are looking for that. So many people graduate high school or college and don't have an outlet for wrestling or football or running track or whatever competitive outlet it is they have. And the tribe of jiu-jitsu, of wanting to show up and challenge yourself and develop that grit and be around a group of other dudes and ladies that are trying to be the best version of themselves. It's like an uplifting spiral.
Well, I like that you say that, I often say this, that especially nowadays, when there's so much competition now with the BJJ academies, they're all over the place, especially here in California, right? And I look at them almost as different products now, right? And so
Right.
one product may not be, ideal for you, as you sort of alluded to. Another product may be for someone else, so long as you're not discouraging, like the examples that you give, like you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. I think cross training should be encouraged along this line. What makes a great instructor, in your opinion?
There's a few ways to slice that apple. I think there's a wide gradient of good coaches. I have 14 coaches at Triangle Academy, and they're all good coaches in their own right, and each one is different. I look for someone that can relate to the students and is personable and is professional far more than their jiu-jitsu skills. Most all of our kids coaches started coaching as white belts. An assistant coach come in and watch the kids do the jumping jacks and like slowly build them up to like teaching a technique or showing the kids how to break fall or something like that. So you can teach someone how to teach. The nuts and bolts of like how to teach and what to teach, their skills in jiu-jitsu, that's the easy part. The hard part is someone who is personable and likable, someone who carries himself well, someone who shows up on time, someone who gives a damn about putting the effort in to develop themselves as a coach and as a person. And so that's one reason that we have only hired internally. The only external hire that I've ever made have been our kickboxing coaches, because we're not kickboxers, we're jiu-jitsu guys. But all jiu-jitsu coaches we've ever had, our front desk assistants, they've all been people that I've hired from within the gym, because, well, firstly, I believe in building your community from inside like that, but also you get to see the measure of someone's integrity before you put responsibility on them.
So then conversely, what makes a great student?
That's a great question too. The biggest thing that I look for is someone who's eager to learn. If someone is happy to be there and you can, as a coach in an environment, make it an exciting learning environment, that's great. I've seen people come in that were worse than 2 miles of bad road, but if they just stick with it, they will get better. I've had that belief challenged in myself. I've had some students come in that I thought surely to God were never going to get better because they just kept sucking for so long. But if you continue showing up and bringing effort, you will get better, no matter who you are, no matter how bad you are at jiu-jitsu. I was one of them. I promise, that's the truth. But you have to be enjoying it. If you're not enjoying it, or you're making yourself do it and your heart's not really in it, over an extended period of time, the payoff isn't going to be there. What makes a good student? Someone that can show up and have a good attitude and enjoy the practice. And another component, well, that's a different question. I would say who makes a good athlete. This isn't necessarily a good student, but who makes a good athlete is someone that can trust their coach. And that circles back almost full circle to one of your original points when you asked about my journey about like picking the right gym and people switching gyms. I strongly believe that if you are an athlete that wants to have specific goals, like you want to be a competitor or a world champion or something like that, you need to have a team of coaches or a training facility that is on the same path you are. If your coach doesn't know what your goals are and doesn't give a damn, you're in the wrong place. Or if your coach, like I had coaches that were nice people, they were good dudes, but they were horrible at jiu-jitsu and coaching and had no interest in helping me achieve my goals. And that's on me, not on them. I should have been wise enough to go find someone that was. But if you want to be a competitor and your coach has no interest in going and coaching you at the local tournament here in town, might as well the world championships, you are in the wrong place. And you need to go align yourself with a coach and a team that's on that mission. And when I've trained or switched over with Heath Pedigo, and they were a group of guys that all wanted to be on that war path, and a coach that was dedicated and would sleep on the mats with us and drive us, 18 hours to the tournaments because we couldn't afford to go get flights at that time. That was the way. And now I don't train with Heath and the Pedigo guys as much anymore just because I run a gym and it's 4 hours away. And, I could get really good training at headquarters, or I can get really good training at my gym. And there's definitely a few more tough rules at that gym, but not worth like 8 hours of driving. The difference isn't quite there. So I train with them every chance I get, and they come to my gym sometimes, and I go up there every once in a while. But I don't train with the OG Daisy Fresh crew as much anymore just because of logistics. Same thing when I'm able to go up to Boston and train with Travis and the Olympians and the judo guys, is like, those are guys that have lived the life and they have done what I'm trying to do and they know how to get there. When Travis Stevens says, do the duck under this way, I had a private lesson with him on Monday or Sunday, and he was teaching one of the techniques that I have the most success with, and he was teaching it completely differently than I've done it. You can think, oh, well, I've had success with this, I'll do it my way, or shut the fuck up, I'll do it the way coach showed me because coach has been there and done that and knows better than I do. Or, if he tells me something about recovery or training or something that like maybe I don't agree with or see that way, you have to be able to, as an athlete, decide either I'm going to do what I think is best and kind of match that with what the coach tells me, or coach has been there, I'm trusting him with my journey, I'm going to do what he tells me to do. Whether I believe it or not, I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to see where that takes me. At some point, the results aren't there. You're putting in the work and the coach isn't, or whatever. You can unhitch your buggy and go somewhere else. But if you commit to like, this is my coach and I'm on this journey, I need to do what the coach tells me. And to have that degree of trust in your coach, you have to know that the coach has been there and done that and cares about where it is you're trying to go.
Has there ever been a time that you considered quitting, and why?
Last year. I wouldn't say that I considered quitting, but I had a really successful 2023 season that I alluded to earlier with the Pan Ams and Euros and so forth. I was ranked number 1 in the world at my weight class of middle heavyweight. And then I tore my hip right as the next season was starting and could barely walk up the stairs. I was on the cusp of needing a really bad surgery. And I went to the Hip Institute, the doctors that invented the procedure for this labor and repair on the hip. They were the best guys in the world at it. And their staff told me that I was fucked and genetically I had bad hips and I probably wouldn't be able to do jiu-jitsu anymore. And we could try some injections, but I probably needed this complete hip replacement bullshit. And it was pretty devastating. And there's a PT here in Nashville I'll give a quick shout out to. His name is Trent Nessler. Trent is a black belt in jiu-jitsu and also one of the most high-level experts in the world on ACL repair. And in addition to that, he's a fantastic all-around physical therapist, but ACL repair is his specialty. And he trains at one of the gyms 20 minutes from my house. He's right here in the area, but I had never met him before. And he reached out to me after my injury and asked if he could do an exam and give me a second opinion. And I had just heard from the doctors, probably quit jiu-jitsu, go fuck yourself and get a surgery. And Dr. Nessler examined me and he said, look, let's give it a couple months of PT. I think you'll be able to go without the surgery, and let's just dive into some PT. And I competed 3 months later.
Wow.
It was a much longer journey than that to heal, but it was functional very quickly. He is an absolute magician, very gifted PT. And now he's one of our team staples. Many of our athletes go to him, and he is worth a trip to Nashville to see. He's that good. But Dr. Nessler being a huge part of that recovery, in that period of 6 months or so when I really couldn't train very much, I did jump into that competition, but just because I was about to go out of my mind, it wasn't advisable. But there was about 6 months there where I was doing very little training. For 3 months, I didn't train at all, didn't lift weights, didn't do jujitsu. I just ran the gym and did PT. And then for the next 6 months after that, I was training, but Triangle Academy is not an easy training room to be in second gear. You've got world-class people trying to take your head off every round, which is what it takes to create champions. And so I was hobbling my way in there with an injury and with like bad lungs, and like it was not fun for a long time. And you asked if I thought about retiring. I didn't think about like quitting jiu-jitsu, but I saw this fork in the road and I hated
Mm-hmm.
myself for seeing it, but I had to acknowledge it.
Mm-hmm.
Said, I heard these thoughts internally of, you had a really good season. You've reached almost the top. You gave it a good effort. The gym is growing. It would be so easy just to be a coach now. And I knew I didn't want to do that, but I knew that I like heard that voice. And I also got pretty depressed. It was a hard time to be injured and watch the guys that I was beating win worlds and everything, and then not be able to train with my athletes in the gym. We got this blue belt. We had just moved to or he's a white belt at the time, who had just moved to town, college wrestler, and he joined our varsity program. And he was green and he was full of piss and vinegar. And then I got hurt. And then as soon as I started coming back in the room, he was beating the dog shit out of me. It's like a fucking white belt wrestler. And I just couldn't touch him. I was hobbling, like trying to, panting and like dying over here after one round. And then Sebastian was beating the dog shit out of me. And so it was like, man, it would be easy to just be a coach now. um, but that's the closest I've come. And that was, I think, it's pretty understandable for the situation.
So, in terms of your jujitsu evolution early on, what was like your early go-to? And were you more of like an offensive practitioner or more like a counter puncher? What was your game and how did it evolve?
Yes, sir. The first thing that I was really good at was triangle chokes. And so triangles were kind of my specialty. And that was the focal point of my training was triangles. Not because I had a million ways to get into them, but it was just what I sucked at the least. I sucked at everything. I sucked at triangle chokes the least. And the judo and the wrestling, I wasn't good at that until, well, I'm still not very good at it. Everyone else is just really bad at it. But I I wasn't like an exceptional takedown guy, but I enjoyed the takedowns and I would always go from the feet. And so I became known as like a takedown guy and a triangle guy. And in the last couple of years, as I've really gotten like stepped it up and had better training resources and a better training room and become more well-rounded, my game is more well-rounded, but I would still say my path as a competitor is takedown, guard, pass, submit. And I don't particularly know what I'm known for, but what I feel comfortable with is an aggressive style of guard passing that I'm still trying to develop and sharpen, but focally around knee cuts. The knee slice pass was a pretty integral part of our passing system at PSF, and Andrew Wiltse, who was my coach for a long time, really instilled that in me, and we just drilled that thousands and thousands of times, and I'm pretty well known for my knee slice. And then I use head and arm chokes a lot. Arm triangles and submissions from the back mount are probably my go-tos now. I don't spend as much time on the bottom playing guard. And then wrestling and judo are my true love. I never wrestled in school or anything like that. Like I said, I was homeschooled and then didn't have a wrestling heavy style in that first gym. But since I've trained at PSF and Open Triangle, and so many of our coaches are collegiate or high school wrestlers, I put a tremendous amount of work on the feet. And then getting tied in with the judo guys has been a huge influence in that as well.
Now, you mentioned triangles. When you see people, not ideally hitting triangles or failing triangles or whatever, what are like the little things that we're missing that you typically see?
Well, there are plenty of guys out there that are much better at triangles than I am. I learn a lot from John Thomas, if you know who that is. John is one of the cutting edge innovators of anything guard or guard related, in my opinion. And I've learned a lot from John. I have a couple different details on triangles that I feel are pretty unique, and I don't see a lot of people doing them. I'm going to release an instructional on triangles at some point soon, and I'll share some of the finer details there. But I would say one of the things that I think people misunderstand on triangles, or that I don't see reflected a lot in the way it's taught, is that moving the arm across is completely unnecessary. And I see people spend a lot of time doing it just because it's the way we were taught. But moving the arm across is unnecessary, and I would even say wasted effort at some point. And the way that I teach triangles has nothing to do with the arm. It's more about how you bite the shoulder. So I have some resources on our YouTube channel, I believe, and I'll put out some instructional soon.
You've mentioned this word varsity several times in terms of your program. Can you sort of specify what that means? And, just for everyone else who doesn't perhaps use this lexicon within their curriculum.
At Triangle Academy, we have something that we call our varsity program. And this really is the evolution of just me and my training partners beating the crap out of each other when I opened the gym. I had a couple guys that I would train with that were my everyday partners. And over time, we wanted to build a program that would give these athletes the resources to truly try and be professional athletes. Most of the time when jiu-jitsu people say they're professional athletes, it just means they have like a 15% off coupon code in their Instagram or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
A professional athlete is like a judoka in France. To use this as an example, judo and wrestling are such better established sports with 100 more years of syllabus and training methodology behind them that they make jujitsu people look like complete amateurs. And that's no discredit to our sport. Our sport is just very young. And I think jujitsu guys that think they train hard or think they train professionally don't understand what professional training is really like. And I'm one of them. I'm preaching to the choir here. But in France, for example, as if you're a judo in the Olympic team, the state pays your salary. Your job is to show up and train judo. The state, as I understand it, pays your family salary. You have a place to live, all your expenses. Like that's your job, is to be an athlete, and it's an actual day job. And the honor of the country depends on that. We wanted to give our athletes a chance where they could train full time, and also a step up from, I came from the Daisy Fresh crew, and no discredit at all to them. Like Heath and those guys changed my life, and I'm still a part of the Daisy Fresh. And I only believe in improving on where we come from, not tearing it down. But I also, just personally, I don't think sleeping on the mats and eating ramen noodles and Monster energy drinks is the path to being like a full-time athlete. I think that's horribly detrimental. You do what you have to when you can. I slept on the mats. We all did. And it was our origin story. You do whatever you have to, but I don't think it should be the goal. And so I wanted to have a program where we could take care of our athletes and give them a good quality of life and the ability to train full time and not have to have little odd jobs to make money and so forth. So it's evolved over time, but the way it is now, we bring athletes in. It's invitation only. So we recruit athletes maybe from around the country that express an interest, or from the local community, or even from within our gym a couple times. We bring them for a tryout and see how they fit in the training room. The biggest thing we're looking at is not how talented someone is, but how coachable they are. And so they'll do like a 90-day tryout usually. They'll come and we see how they fit in. And then if we sign them for a contract, it's a one season. So from one world championship to the next world championship. And in that season, they sign an obligation to a certain training regimen. So they train twice a day, 5 days a week, and a couple, one like light training day, and then one cross training day where we go to other gyms and train if we're not competing. Strength and conditioning, physical therapy, they get mental health therapy, they get their programming written up, they get professional coaching from myself and the other coaches.
Wow.
Live training at night. They get sponsored to go to training camps at other places, like go fly up to Boston, fly down to Texas and train a gym down there. They get all their flights, hotels, their food, they get chiropractic, they get all of their entry fees to the tournaments. Like everything is paid for. And they get a place to live. We even have an arrangement with a farm store out near us, where they go and they pick up, grass-fed beef and raw eggs and milk and rice and like all the local food. Like we feed them farm to table, and their job is to win. That is their only job. And we track how much sleep they get every night. We track their statistics of wins and losses over the season. We give them film study to watch. Like their job is to be a professional athlete. And every single season since the inception of that program, the Varsity program has produced adult Pans and world champions.
Wow.
And that was, and of course, like that's not black belt. I mean, I medaled at black belt at some high level events as well, but it's white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, and black belt, from white to black. And the thought process in this was tremendously influenced by Jimmy Pedro and Travis Stevens and the relationship we have with those judo guys, because they ran the Olympic judo team for Team USA for 10 to 12 years. And so being blessed with that connection, I was able to bend their ear about this and learn a lot about how to run a program, because a lot of people can run a good gym. It's hard, but there's a lot of exceptional people out there. A lot of people can run a good gym and have one or two tough students. I mean, we've all seen it. Even like mid-level gyms have a couple hammers in there usually.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a blue belt world champion or this or that, or like a high performer, and that's awesome. But what's truly hard to do is create a program that produces consistent results. Like, how can I have a blueprint that doesn't just make me a champion, but makes me and the guy behind me and the guy behind him all champions? And I don't want to oversell this program. It is not the be all end all. We're always learning and improving it and trying to, make adjustments and tweaks, and hopefully
Mm.
next year and the year after that it'll be better and better than it is now. But as it stands, it has produced consistent results and only getting better and better. And that's what we've tried to do is have a program that cares for the athletes, gives them the support that they need, and produces consistent results. And at the end of the day, and this is, I'll say this in summation, at the end of the day, I also think there's a void in jiu-jitsu when you have someone that's sponsored or, gets everything paid for, whatever. There's good opportunities for athletes here and there. At the end of the day, people aren't going to be athletes forever. And Dan Gable is a great example of this. I just finished reading Dan Gable's autobiography for the second time. He says that, the real mark of what you do on the mats is how it affects your life off the mats. And these athletes that were NCAA champs for him or Olympic champions or whatnot move on and do great things after college. Like, what do they do outside of the wrestling room? And so we have a heart for, if this athlete is a blue belt world champion, a purple belt world champion, and by the time he's, a 28-year-old brown belt or he's a black belt and 30 years old, he stops being a varsity athlete, what's his next step? Does he want to open a jiu-jitsu gym? Does he want to be an entrepreneur? Does he want to go work at a car dealership and be a badass cauliflower car salesman? Like, what does he want to do? And how taken the time in the training room to prepare him for that life? And so that's something that we're putting more and more attention on as we train, is not only giving these guys the opportunity to train their balls off and win and go see the world and have a great life for a few seasons, but how are we positioning them to go succeed at life after that?
That's fascinating. I think to a different extent, what kept popping in my head is the conversations I had with Adele, double ADCC gold, probably one of the greatest females now competing, in Jake O'Driscoll, her coach, and a program they were telling me about where Lachlan Giles has in Australia, where effectively what they're doing is they're picking the best of the best in Australia.
Lockie has some friends in high places, and they were nice enough to actually donate a substantial amount of money with the kind of underlying thing of putting it back into the Australian Jiu-Jitsu community. Lockie came up with his own criteria about where he thought the money would benefit the most, and supporting some of the athletes that were at the higher end of things that were wanting to break through onto the main stage but just were struggling financially to make it to the major events or do the training camps in America or afford the things like strength and conditioning, rehabilitation, all those things that do cost an athlete. And the kind of stipulations that Lockie put behind that was your accolades have to meet a certain level, have to spend at least 6 months in Australia feeding back into the Australian Jiu-Jitsu scene, and have to be a natural athlete, not taking any performance enhancing drugs. And he went to the extent of testing a whole bunch of athletes in Australia. So he randomized tested us, and then that was what allowed us to have any of the money come to us.
So it sounds to an extent like what you're doing, but yours is this 360 approach, which is incredible as well. And I find it to be so beneficial, man.
Absolutely. I love to hear that other people are doing that. And Lachlan is certainly way smarter than I am. So I'll try to learn from what he's doing. The other thing is no discredit to anyone who recruits athletes. We have certainly had people from other gyms that switch over, but there's one thing to take someone that's winning the world championships at purple belt and say, hey, move to San Diego and join Atos and you'll be the next black belt world champion. No discredit at all.
Sure. Or move to Austin and join. Yeah.
It's what colleges do, like I get it. But there's a whole nother accomplishment to taking someone that's a white belt and saying, like, from the ground up, we're going to build you as an athlete, like a homegrown champion.
Agreed.
And our varsity program, the reason we have a small lineup right now, there's 4 of us on the program. I would be the coach of the program, but myself and 3 other athletes. And we have a couple other training partners that aren't full-timers. Like, for example, we have a lady that's a paramedic, one of our tough female competitors, and she works 24 hours and then she's off for 48 hours. So she can train a lot, but she's not a full-time commitment to the program. She has a work obligation and so forth. So she would be what we call like our junior varsity. She gets to train in the invite-only practices and get some support when she goes and competes, but she's not obligated to like the full training schedule. So there's 4 of us that are on the program right now, and then we have several of those junior varsity members as well. But it is entirely funded from the gym. We don't do fundraisers. We don't have outside investors. It is funded by the revenues of the gym. A percentage of the gym income goes to fund this program. And each sponsorship costs between $20,000 and $30,000 per athlete per season. So it's tremendously expensive to invest in these athletes. And so we have a small stable. My mindset when I opened the gym was, instead of having 15 athletes that we kind of take care of, I'd rather have 3 or 4 that we really take care of. And as the gym grows, we'll expand that program.
I've heard you mention this about something like this before, that you were taking like 4 or 5 students under your wing that you could mentor. And I'm curious if that was like from a scaling perspective, just because you can't be a coach, and I'm separating coach from teacher on purpose here.
Love that distinction, by the way.
When you focus on these 5 individuals, I'll just say 5 for now, whatever it may be, because it's difficult to scale. You have to give all of Clay Mayfield, right, to those people. And you have many plates that you're spinning. What are you doing with these people? How do you scale that out?
Sure. That's a great question. So I want to expound on a great distinction you made there between coach and instructor. And I think this is the answer to the question you just asked. There's a difference, and you can probably split the pie however you want, but the way that I would define it, an instructor is someone who teaches the class. Students show up, the coach is there on time, he teaches a great class, he cares about what he teaches. You can be a really good instructor without being a coach, and that's no discredit at all to an instructor. I have several of them on staff, and I know that they're not coaches. I know that they're instructors, and they're great guys or ladies. They care, they do a great job, but when the job's done, the job's done. A coach is someone that is intimately connected with your journey. And this is another thing that people who maybe think they want to be a world champion or a competitor and they have an instructor and they need a coach. I was one of those for a long time. A coach is someone who knows the ins and outs of your game, not just you and 30 other people, and he knows he taught Uchimata in class. Like, he knows your game. He knows that you struggle with the left-hand collar grip being on your, on your chest. He knows you struggle with breaking spider guard and you pass to the left side instead of the right side. A coach watches film on your matches. A coach will drive 4 hours or fly across the country to be in your corner when you're competing. A coach knows the competitors in your bracket and he knows what your weakness is. A coach knows the last time you lost. The coach knows how much sleep you got last night. That's the difference between a coach and a competitor. And the limited resource is the coach. I can't do that for 47 people. I can teach a class with 47 people and they all go home happy and then I go home to my family, but I can be a coach to a very small number of people. And so that's why, I'm the head coach of my gym. I teach a good amount of the classes, not most of them anymore, but I teach a lot of classes when I'm in town, but I only coach a few athletes. We have, like I said, almost 400 students in the gym. Most of them are adults. We have about 150 kids and about 250 adults. And I have other coaches under me whose job it is to reach out to all the white belts, and another one to all the kids and all the blue belts. Every week they're texting 50 people. Hey, I noticed you weren't in class, last week. Or, hey, Dan, you did a great job with the ankle lock. We're going to set you up with a private lesson, show you some of those details, or whatever it is. It's always communicating with the students, because I can't do that for everyone. I do that with my varsity guys. And then if there's 5 or 6 of the higher performers in class, maybe people that don't come to varsity practice or whatnot, but they give a damn about being as good as they can, I'll give extra attention to those people in class as well. And one thing we do at Triangle, and I would say this is probably one of the most impactful things I've ever done at the gym, is how we warm up. We warm up all of our classes with something that we call the technique of the month. And it's always something simple. This month is arm triangle, head and arm choke from mount. Last month, I think it was Kimuras from guard. The month before that, it might be knee slice pass. So it's always something very simple. And everyone drills that for 10 minutes at the beginning of class as the warm up. And so that way, most people are lucky to train twice a week. The you and I and varsity guys that can train twice a day, 5 days a week are the exception to the rule. Most people are lucky to make it in 2 or 3 times a week. And so if I teach armbar, they may not see armbar again for 3 months, and then they've forgotten most of it. And you don't really learn the move in class. You see it, you go through the steps 4, 5, or 10 times, but it's not really in your muscle memory yet. And that's why it takes so long to learn, because you see something, you see it 3 months later, you see it 2 months later, and it slowly catches on. And it's just an imperfect system, because, you only get so good training 2 or 3 times a week. But we have a technique of the month. So every time you come to class in the month of December, you're going to do arm triangles. And no matter what else we're learning for the rest of class, you've done that 400 times at the end of December, and it is in your muscle memory. And over a year, you've got 12 techniques that are staples: hip throw, single leg, knee slice, rear naked choke, shrimp escape, and you've done them hundreds and hundreds of times. And we do that in our fundamentals classes. We do it in our advanced classes. And in our fundamentals classes, we'll also do a couple minutes of, rollouts and break falls, so the students that have never trained to learn those basic movements. But every single class in that month, the technique of the month is a 10-minute warm up before we get into the technique for that class. And super simple. I would say that's probably one of the most helpful things we've ever implemented at the gym to help all the people that aren't full-time athletes get all those reps in. My point in saying all that was, when I have someone that maybe isn't a varsity guy, but needs a little extra attention, or one of my more advanced guys, I can take him in that technique of the month when the rest of the class is doing the 10-minute warm up. I can take these two ladies and show them this footlock escape that they were struggling with in class. And it's kind of time to tailor the homework in the class without having people do private lessons.
I love that. Yeah, and I love the usage of actual instruction versus, I don't know, a quote unquote traditional warm up or something reinforcing jujitsu to trying to maximize time.
You can do push-ups and jumping jacks on your own. Like
Yeah.
if you're in class, learn jiu-jitsu.
Your thoughts on the ecological approach to teaching?
I don't know the ins and outs of the conversation well enough to be super educated, and Josh Saunders can probably beat me up, so I don't want to talk too badly about it. But it's not my cup of tea. I'm sure if Josh or components of that approach had a conversation with me, I would understand it better and be a little less critical. But I think that drilling is the way, the truth, and the life. And I think there's just some things that you just can't replicate without getting a lot of reps. Having said that, I am not of the mindset that you have to do everything 10,000 times. Some things like knee slice pass, or like sweep single leg, you get hundreds of reps and you develop that muscle memory.
I think of Andrew Wiltse.
Absolutely.
I mean, talk about the case for drilling. My God.
Right. But other things, I think once you've done a couple hundred reps and you have the nuts and bolts down, then you need to start adding the resistance and the context. There's past a point with most techniques, if I'm still just doing just the grip break and we're no longer talking about the grip fight or us moving as I'm grip breaking, then I'm just wasting my time. I'm kind of losing the context. So certain things, especially simple things, I think the high rep drilling is where it's at, and we do a lot of it. Other things, I think you really need to have the context and the resistance and like positional spar. So when we do our varsity trainings, every day we do a private training session for the pro athletes. We'll do a skill progression where, maybe we drill something for 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and then we'll do positional sparring very specific from that position. So maybe we're starting from headquarters and I'm only trying a knee slice and you have to not let me get the underhook, and we have to fight that in just that very specific wind condition or something like that. A better answer would probably be, I think the truth is somewhere in the middle, which is usually the case. You got to drill, and you also have to have the framework of like what they would call the games or the ecological approach. I think probably the truth is in the middle.
Now, you mentioned the arm triangle for this month's technique. Arm triangle is a very difficult thing, I think, for a lot of people to finish, especially in the gi, it seems like. Where are you seeing the mistakes? What are the common sort of deficiencies that we need to close that gap with?
Yes, I would say the arm triangle is probably my best submission. And it's another one like the triangle choke that I think there's a lot of misconceptions around. It looks like you just grab the head and arm and you just squeeze till the cows come home. Though it's so much easier to show in a video or in a technique. But in this context, I would just say the biggest thing that I think people mess up about the head and arm choke is getting their head around the shoulder. People just go like forehead to forehead, and the pressure is kind of across your shoulder or your tricep, but digging your head through that armpit to really push the shoulder into the neck is a game changer. And I highlighted that when we had the chance to teach that PSF seminar at Jiu-Jitsu Con this year. We highlighted some details on how to capture that shoulder in the head and arm choke.
How did you learn to teach, and how do you keep that sword sharp in terms of just evolving your actual instruction? And additionally, how do you mentor? You were talking about these people that you hire.
Great question. I would say that to give credit where credit's due, I learned to teach through the guys at my first gym at the Gracie Gym. They are horrible at jiu-jitsu and devious in business practice and so forth, and a long list of other things. But I wouldn't send anyone to those gyms for many reasons. They are fantastic teachers. And I had a coaching program that I went up through when I was a child. I started when I was 15. So I was a teen and I was starting to assist with the kids' classes and so forth. And they had a mentorship program where you would log your hours and you would take notes on teaching, and you would come watch the classes and observe and then talk to the coach afterwards about what you noticed. And it was a very thorough program teaching the art of teaching. And that is where that developed. And I journal a lot of my teaching thoughts. I think a lot of people don't take time to reflect on themselves. So journaling, I'll take note of, I said this in class and I feel like it didn't come across the right way, or, I was on my phone a lot. I'm going to try to do better about that. Or, I taught this way and the analogy didn't seem to stick, so I'm going to try this other analogy. And I think just being intentional at reflecting about your teaching is one step. But honestly, that initial program that I went through, it was the 1,000-hour program. And every 2 months you get a certification like apprentice level 1, apprentice level 2. I think they based it on a yoga teaching course that one of the head coaches had gone through. I don't think it's something replicated, but I learned how to teach from that original Gracie Gym in Kentucky, and they did a fantastic job.
Wow. How are you instructing your instructors? How are you developing your instructors?
So I started once a week meeting with all the coaches. We have a coach private lesson where I teach the coaches, and we will go over quick gym policy or updates, and then any issues that are coming up with the classes, and dialogue how to handle those situations. And in those classes, I'll talk with them about how to handle things like a crying child in class, or if one student asked for another student's phone number, how do you handle that kind of thing? And then in addition to those kind of teaching tips, we'll go through the curriculum. Went through for a year now for the whole fundamental cycle. Here's how we teach the double leg takedown. Here's how we teach the arm lock escape, and the A, B's, and C's of what the slices are, and then how to teach it. And then we'll role play it back and forth, and they'll get to teach it to me and the other coaches. And so it's kind of a pressure cooker for that. And then also in those lessons, sometimes we'll be teaching how to teach the technique of that week or the upcoming week. And then also sometimes I'll just be teaching them jiu-jitsu for their education. I'll go over some of the more advanced stuff with the coaches so they can continue their learning. But having a weekly meeting or a weekly lesson where the coaches are being taught is tremendous. I think in a lot of gyms, myself included, when I started coaching for many years, it's very easy to take someone who learns how to teach or has that level of responsibility and just say, all right, go for it, kid. And they're not getting their investment anymore or being invested in.
Let's talk about your belting criteria. Can you walk us through requirements? What are you looking for?
Yes, sir. So this is a great question. And I don't know that there will ever be an answer to this in jiu-jitsu. But my answer to this question is it's a juxtaposition between a student's individual progress and the baseline skill level for that belt. And that's a little nebulous to use a white to blue belt as an example. Like what is a blue belt? Well, it depends on who's asking and who's answering, right? Because there's no set standard in the sport of jiu-jitsu. There's a general understanding of a blue belt should have a firm handle on the basics, whatever the basics are, and should be competent from each position and kind of understand the big picture of jiu-jitsu and be doing certain things like controlling their breath and being able to train safely with other people. In judo, for example, it used to be just white belt and then black belt, and that was it. And they have the children's belts now, but it used to be white belt to black belt, and black belt didn't mean you had mastered the sport. Black belt meant you knew the techniques and could train safely. It meant you knew the 60 basic throws of the Kodokan, and you could randori safely where you weren't going to hurt your training partners, and that was it. It didn't really denote that you were a master or anything like that. And so I look at blue belt kind of that way. It means you understand the basics of the sport. I like my people to compete. Not everyone's required to, but if you don't compete at my gym, it takes a little longer to get promoted just because you're not putting it to the test. And so I look at, do you have that handle on the basics? You know most of the basic techniques, you roll well, you've been training, usually for my gym, it's between 2 to 3 years. And how far have you come since you walked in the door? I have one guy that came in and had lost 90 pounds in his first 8 months or 12 months. And
Wow.
like for him, that was more important than any tournament. I don't think he competed, and we gave him his blue belt because he was absolutely kicking ass, but also he was training twice a day, several days a week, and lost 90 pounds. Like that's commendable. And other people, it's different depending on where they're at. So it's a balance between their progress and the handle on the basics. And I always tell my students, if you want to remove all doubt, if you're curious where you're at and you want to remove all doubt, go win the world championships at white belt. Show me you're the best in the world and we'll talk. And if you're not there yet, then it will be that balance.
Now, you said the non-competitors could take longer, but I often hear, hey, I'm going to be a little harder on my competitors in terms of belting. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think it goes back to not so much if someone's a competitor or not, but what their capacity is. And the competitors are naturally going to have higher capacity. So or potential might be a better word. So I'll take, for example, the varsity fellow that I was telling you about that was beating the shit out of me after my injury, and did again today. But his name is Sebastian, and he's like a 6'2", 215-pound high school wrestler, and ended up pretty damn good wrestler with a little jiu-jitsu experience. He came in with maybe 6 or 8 months of experience here and there, and came in and just had a great attitude and picks up very quickly. And within a few months, he was, like scoring takedowns on me and working some other tough guys in the room. And that didn't mean that he got his blue belt right away, because he still didn't know a lot of the basic techniques. He's just a scrappy motherfucker. And so we got through the basics. He had a good first season in jiu-jitsu, and we gave him his blue belt. He went out and lost first round at Pan Am's, and he was I don't want to say we expected him to win, but it was well within his capacity to win. And he went out and he just shit the bed and lost first round. We still gave him his blue belt. It wasn't about holding him back until he won. It was about like, you've done everything you can. Okay. And so now he's a blue belt and he's better. He could tap out most of the purple or brown belts in the training room that don't compete and train twice, 6 days a week like he does. But he still has so much to learn. And then compared to the guys in his bracket that he's competing against, where's his level? If he goes and he competes for the next 12 months and doesn't lose a single match, he's probably ready for his purple belt because the field is saying that, like his peers are referencing his skill level.
Can you tell me a non-jiu-jitsu fondest childhood memory?
Man, I have so many. One of my favorite things that we did as a child was traveling. And that's such a big answer because we traveled so many places. One of the things that my parents did the best was giving us an exposure to the world. We were homeschooled and we moved around a lot. So I have memories when I was 4 years old in St. Martin with like the rats crawling up the palm tree next to our house and the hurricane coming in and, like going and seeing the island after the hurricane. I remember picking up hermit crabs in Belize when we went to play with the neighborhood kids, and there were like iguanas and hermit crabs running everywhere. I remember staying at Airbnbs in Belgium and Germany as a 7-year-old and like, driving all day across the countryside and seeing all the cool things. And my parents instilled a love for travel. And to this day, that is one of the greatest gifts that they gave me because I absolutely love my job. I love competing and making friends in the jiu-jitsu community. And I love being able to travel as a dovetail for those things. So I get to see so many cool places. And when we go and travel with the varsity team, if we need to compete 5 times in the first half of the year, it doesn't really matter if we compete in Atlanta or compete in Dublin. So we competed in Dublin. Like, why the hell not? And so the ability to kind of call our shots and choose where we're going to compete. We're going to Rome in a few weeks for the European Championships, and a bunch of our team is going to go to Tokyo next year for the Asian Championships. And
Wow.
we just get to mix our passions. And that would be one of my fondest impressions from my childhood is just how much I love to travel. And my parents gifted that to me and how they raised us.
Wow, that's great. I love that. I want to get your take on, in your mind, who most underrated grapplers, historical or otherwise, or present day?
Man, that's a great question. I know someone that I train with personally. His name is Jonathan Hart. He's a brown belt, one of our brown belts, lives in South Carolina, and he's a featherweight, pretty small fella, but to this day, one of my toughest roles. He's the best person that I've ever trained with in my life, with the possible exception of Andrew Wiltse. He's the best person I've ever trained with at taking the back. John Hart is an absolute wizard and reminds me a lot of John Thomas, but he's a featherweight brown belt. He came to the gym as a blue belt and was living out of the back of his camper, and he was one of our first varsity athletes. And so he's not a name that a lot of people know, but if he chose to make a career out of jiu-jitsu, he certainly would be. He's a monster. This may not be an unknown grappler. He's certainly not, but I think one of the people that no one understands how good he is Travis Stevens. With Travis, I've had the opportunity to train with him so many times over the last few years and now have a bit of a coach relationship where he mentors me in some of my progressions. And I think sometimes people think I'm like blowing things out of proportion or maybe like blowing smoke up his ass when I talk about how good Travis is, but they don't understand that when Travis like puts his hands on you, it reminds me of when my dad used to grab me when I was like 5 years old and your dad like grabs you, like
Wow.
it's fucking terrifying. And I grapple people all day, every day. I mean, I grapple with some of the most dangerous people in jiu-jitsu all the time. Travis is in a league of his own. And that's a reflection of just how much more serious judo is than jiu-jitsu as a whole. But I think Travis is an exception even in judo. There's not many people that have made it to the quarterfinals of the Olympics 3 times and maybe the finals of the Olympics. And also being a black belt under Danaher, just how quickly he went into the blue basement and was immediately just like, I don't want to say hanging with Gordon. I wasn't there, but like a training partner with Gordon and hanging with the best guys in the jiu-jitsu world immediately as someone from a different sport. Just grappling makes sense to him. He has a gift for teaching and explaining, but just this no bullshit mindset and approach to jiu-jitsu. I not only learn judo and I am a white belt at judo. I am not very good, but I have an absolute passion for it. I often say that judo is a sport that I wish I had been born into, but it's one of those, if you don't start when you're a child, you'll never catch up. Judo was my first passion. It is by far and above my favorite sport over jiu-jitsu. But I learned judo and takedowns because how you do a seonagi or unichimata in jiu-jitsu is different than how you do it in judo. So I may not be learning pure judo, but I learned judo techniques for jiu-jitsu from Travis. But even more than that, I just learned jiu-jitsu from Travis. The last time he came up, he comes every year and does a camp at my gym. And the last time he did a camp, it was just Newaza. He just showed ground fighting, and he showed like how to do collar chokes and arm locks, stuff that we have done every day since I started jiu-jitsu. And I had never seen the details, and they were better than anything I've ever learned.
Wow.
And it's because judo guys have been doing arm bars for 100 years longer than we have, like doing that shit in like 1890 in Japan, and you can go back through that etymology of like what was called what, and was it jiu-jitsu, was it judo? No one cares. It's grappling, and they're better at it than we are. And so, yeah, I don't think he's underrated, but I think jiu-jitsu people don't understand Travis isn't just a dude that does judo. He is like judo, wrestling, jiu-jitsu. He is one of the best grapplers I have ever touched, and one of the few human beings that legitimately scares me.
So is it true the Wiltse brothers lived at your gym for a bit? And did Andrew convince you to buy a dog?
So Andrew and Bird Wiltse.
And who is Riddle's brother?
Andrew and Bird Wiltse were my main training partners on the PSF team. And they were my main influences and my main training partners. So when I opened Triangle just a couple of years after finding Pedigo, I had no training partners. I opened the gym and it was a bunch of white belts and the occasional blue or purple belt that joined from another gym, but they weren't like our caliber of athletes. They were just people that were joining a Triangle. And so I didn't really have people to train with the way that we had been training at headquarters. And so every couple months, Andrew and his brother Bird would come down and train for a week or something like that. And they would teach classes, they'd make a little money, and then they would help me train and teach me. And that was invaluable when I opened the gym and I was like a lifeline away from my team. And so, especially over the first 3 years of Triangle, they came down very frequently. At one point, I tore my meniscus and I needed surgery, and the Wiltse brothers came down and they stayed for a month at my gym and taught all my classes and were just tremendously helpful. They were just really good guys. And so they not only were the biggest influence on my jiu-jitsu, I learned almost everything I know about jiu-jitsu from Andrew, and then that role has kind of moved to Travis now. But at that time, I learned almost everything I knew from Andrew and Bird. And so they were just a big influence in the gym because they were the team members that were coming down. I think Jacob Brooks and Alejandro and the other core group of the PSF guys were more involved in the coaching up there and the running PSF wrestling and so forth. So Andrew and Bird were the ones that could come down and stay for extended periods of time. They never lived in Franklin, but they stayed for extended periods of time and helped me coach and helped me really develop the gym in those early days. And somewhere in that journey, Andrew and I were talking about getting dogs, and we ended up getting two brothers, Australian Shepherd Border Collie mixes, and we got puppies from the same litter. And so he named his Riddle after Tom Riddle from Harry Potter, and I named my little fella Revan from Star Wars because we're both nerds.
That's awesome, dude. I love that story. So I want to get into judo a bit more, why it resonates with you. What can we get out of it as judo practitioners versus no-gi? You mentioned judo for jiu-jitsu, the deltas between the two. Can you just give us the judo gamut?
Absolutely. So judo it looks very similar to jiu-jitsu. And I think when, you can go to YouTube and watch judo compilations and kind of understand what's going on as a jiu-jitsu guy. But fundamentally, the rule sets are so different. In judo, you win by one clean throw. So if you throw your opponent flat on their back, you win the match. Even if you roll over and they wind up on top, for example. And the reason for that is once you start to really understand how to throw another human being, to generate that kind of power, you have to like go all in and be able to get that roll, or sometimes. So that's just part of it. And I remember I used to watch judo matches as a jiu-jitsu guy and be like, oh, well, he wound up on bottom. He didn't, but like the reality is you just have to do that to throw a human being with the power that there is in judo. So it's all about the throw. And then when you throw someone in judo, if they turn or they don't fall quite on their back, they land on their side or something like that, you can keep going on the ground, but for a very short period of time. You either immediately pin their shoulders, and if you pin them, I think it's 20 seconds. It's a long time. But if you pin them, or if you submit them with an arm lock or a choke, there's no leg locks in judo. But if you submit them or pin them, then you win. That's also called an ippon, or a win. If the action on the ground continues for very long at all, like more than a few seconds, they'll stand it back up because it's all about the throw. So Judo is just a much faster paced sport because it can all be over in a split second. In jiu-jitsu, you can catch maybe a quick flying armbar or pull right to an ankle lock, but it is almost unheard of in the context of how many matches there are and the statistics of how matches end. It's almost unheard of to have a very quick finish. In judo, it can go from like an absolute tie to you win in 0.5 seconds. And so the action is so much faster. The stalling calls are so much quicker. It's just a more exciting sport to watch. And I love slapping people with the planet. I love picking someone up and putting them on the ground. That is my favorite thing in jiu-jitsu and judo and grappling. And so I gravitate towards that. When I was a kid, we started jiu-jitsu, and 2 months later, the club started a judo program. And so I started that at almost the same time. And I always enjoyed the judo a little more. I remember when I was 16, 17, just really getting into it. It wasn't Leandro Lowe compilations that I was watching. It was Ilias Iliadis and, my favorite judokas. And so I loved the throws and the takedowns and never really got a chance to get into it. We continued that judo program at my Gracie gym, but I came to find out that it was unaffiliated with USA Judo. It was just kind of like a podunk program. And so we got ranked through there. I got my green belt, my orange belt, and eventually my black belt. But I didn't really know much more than just the names of the throws. And so for several years, I kind of like thought I was a judo black belt. And I mean, I guess I was. My coach gave me one, but you can be completely unaffiliated. If you get a judo black belt, you can give someone to someone else, and it's not ranked or recognized. And so when I opened Triangle, I had met Travis Stevens and Jimmy Pedro through Fuji Sports because we opened a Fuji account. And at the time I had been sponsored by Fuji. They gave me some gis. And so I knew who Travis was. I knew he had just retired from the Olympics and he was a badass judoka, and I loved judo.
Mhm.
And so I thought, hey, I'm going to invite Travis to Triangle Academy. He was the first seminar we ever did at Triangle.
Wow.
Second. But I invited Travis and I was like, I'm going to have him do a judo camp. We're going to learn some throws. He's going to be better at this, but I do judo too. We do the same thing. He's just better. And come to find out, he called me out to like uke for him and asked me to grab the sleeve, and I grabbed the wrong grip. I had no idea how to grab a sleeve or hold a grip. And he took like 5 minutes to explain how to hold a sleeve grip. And I was like, okay, I don't actually know anything, do I? And it was the whole week over the whole camp. I just realized that I actually didn't know judo at all. I had learned, here's a uchimata, here's a marote seonagi, but I had no idea the grip fighting or the off balancing or the drills or anything. I just got like boom, 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 boom. And so I explained the situation to him and Jimmy, and as I got to know them a little better over the first couple of years of doing business and training together, I just explained I loved judo. We had a complete unaffiliated program. I don't feel like I know anything. I said, look, if I'm able to, can I go back to white belt and just earn my rank through the official channel through you guys as you think I'm ready? And they said completely no problem. And so I started bringing them in every year. Every year, Jimmy Pedro comes and does a grip fighting seminar where he just teaches how to grip and how to move. And then every year, Travis comes in and does a judo camp with us. And then I am able to fly up to Boston a couple times a year to the judo center and train with them there. And then whenever Fuji Sports is at the different tournaments like the Master Worlds or the European Championships, and they have a booth, then usually Travis and I will go find some mats and get some private lessons in. So several times a year when I'm around these guys, I just get to glean a little bit of information from them and increase my skills.
That's amazing. What a blessing for you, man. That's
Indeed.
incredible.
Indeed.
Man. What's this interesting pattern that I'm seeing with you is like, even with your jujitsu and with judo, is that you have the thought that you have a certain level of efficacy, right? And then you run into like whatever it may be, a Heath Pedigo or a Andrew Wiltse or a Travis Stevens, and then suddenly you realize I'm not where I thought I was. Have you seen this within yourself as well in your journeys?
It's interesting as you're pointing this out because I hadn't seen those two kind of epochs paralleling until you put it like that. But I suppose that is true. I've certainly seen that journey in jiu-jitsu, but you're right in the judo as well, and they parallel one another. My approach has always been that if reality doesn't match up with your picture of reality, if I think I'm good and then I realize that I'm not and reality is telling me something else, the only way to change that is by putting in the work. Like if I think that I'm a judo black belt and I train with a high level judo guy, like what's the alternative? To just pretend, to avoid the confrontation of reality and just say like, look, I can go pretend I'm a judo black belt and put it on my seminar flyers and like just know that I actually am not that good. Or I can be like, fuck it, let's go back to the drawing board and put in the work. Because like the only way that's going to change the suck is just putting in the work. And that's an easy choice.
That just seems so tough, like you were so far in your journey in terms of like this belting, like a brown belt, for instance, in jiu-jitsu and, with judo, granted, no, differently, but you're like, it's inspiring to see someone like have to be, quote unquote humbled, and then you sort of revisit and redirect yourself, and then have to go grind again, so to speak, to get to just par.
I'm coming to realize that life is so much about your perspective and your attitude. And I think the winning perspective there, instead of getting upset or down about how far back you are, the exciting perspective is, or the winning perspective is to be excited that, hey, I could actually be that good. Like maybe I thought I was here and I'm here, but this dude's here and I can be that good. That's possible. Like he's showing me what's possible and I'm going to get there with his help or whatever the situation is.
What I wish is that we could somehow instill that in students or your customers, because you get those people that are just like, and myself too, from the beginning, I always call myself the quitter, right? Like the kid where you open up the closet door and there's the unicycle and the juggling things and the karate gi, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like, as soon as I failed at something, I was like, well, I guess it's not for me, you know what I mean? And off
Yeah.
to the next thing. Dang, could you imagine not having judo in your life and jujitsu in your life, And so just pushing those people, that perspective that you shared.
It's also a cost benefit analysis. If like, for example, I don't believe in making kids do sports they hate for an extended period of time. If a kid does not enjoy jiu-jitsu, then I don't believe in forcing them to do jiu-jitsu. Like find another sport they enjoy over an extended period of time. We do a long intro trial. We do a 4-week trial where kids can come in and really see what it's all about before they sign up. And then we do a 6-month season. So they commit to 6 months when they sign up. We don't do this for adults, but just the kids. After the trial, they have to commit to 6 months. And within that 6 months, they get one cycle of the curriculum. They get to compete at least once. And so they really get to wrap their head around what jiu-jitsu is. I believe in making a kid stick with something if they committed to it for a period of time like that. But if they get to the end of that 6 months and they just don't enjoy it and they want to go try piano or bowling or, whatever else, I think that's how you should raise your kids. And the same thing as an adult. If I love jiu-jitsu, or let's say judo is a good example. I love judo and I want to get better at judo, but it's going to take me 10 years of training with Travis to like reach whatever level I want. The 10 years is going to pass. In 10 years, it's going to be 10 years from now. I might as well pass that time getting to the goal. But if it's like, the journey there is not something I'm going to enjoy. Like, I don't believe I should force myself to, I can't think of something I fucking hate right now, but like if there's something I just don't enjoy, I don't believe you should force yourself to do it with no benefit just because you force yourself to do it. But if it's like, that's a goal that I want to get to, the time's going to pass anyway. One of my business mentors that helped me with a lot of the business stuff, getting the gym started, owns several successful karate gyms. And he has a big banner in the back of his gym. And if my balls were a little bigger, I would have put this up at Triangle when I opened. It said, kids don't quit, parents quit.
Mm.
And I think there's so much truth to that. It boggles my mind. And I'm not a parent, so like I've got to say this with a bit of reservation because I'm sure I'll eat my words when I become. But if you sign up for classes and we commit, to the month or the 6 months or whatever, and then a couple weeks in or a couple months in, like so-and-so has a bad practice and little Johnny doesn't want to come, and mom and dad is like, well, we want to quit. We can't bring him to class. I'm like, well, is that what you say when he doesn't want to go to school in the morning? Like who runs the house, the 6-year-old or you? If we've made a decision and you want to commit to to something, and that's the measure of your resolve is to show your 6-year-old that he can have a bad practice and quit, then let's not do that. And that's the reason I would say I'm not a big fan of contracts. We don't do contracts with our adults or anything like that. But that's the reason we have a commitment for the kids and not for the adults, is kids can't see their way past one bad practice. Adults can go get the crap kicked out of them once or twice and have a bad practice and still see the payoff of coming back and doing it later. Kids get a bruise or a bloody nose or get beaten up a couple times and don't enjoy the practice and they go cry and want to quit. And it's hard for them to see that payoff down the line.
Why is the academy named Triangle?
Most people think it's because Triangle chokes, but it's actually not. I named the gym Triangle Academy because the triangle represents the 3 parts of a person, or 3 parts of a jiu-jitsu athlete: the mind, the body, and the spirit. And this isn't something too Tony Robbins or too woohoo, but the way I looked at it when I opened the gym, and the way that we still look at it, is we want the physically strong athletes that can get hands on someone and beat the crap out of their opponent. That part's obvious. We want to develop smart athletes that can utilize the strategy of the sport and the mental approach and have mental toughness and fortitude. But we also want to develop the spirit. And again, I don't mean that in any religious connotation or spirituality. I just mean we want to develop well-rounded individuals. And I feel that it behooves us as coaches and as academy owners to make sure that people are better when they walk out the door than they were when they came in. And so we want to empower individuals in the mind, the body, and the spirit, and make sure that we're not just making good competitors, but we're helping people be better versions of themselves. We're actually doing a challenge at the gym this month. We're doing Sober October, and all the coaches and I are doing it together, and we wanted to extend it to the student base. And so we do things like that where, you know, if there's something you want to cut from your life and you need the encouragement to do it as a team, we want to help people rally behind what's going to make you a better version of yourself. And little challenges like that or other things that we do throughout the year have that in mind of not only how are we becoming better athletes, but better people and helping our tribe.
Are you still a pescatarian?
Pescatarian? No, I was a vegetarian for a while. I'm the complete opposite now. I am almost carnivore.
I thought so.
I love food. When I left home,
Funny how that happens so often.
Isn't it though?
Yeah.
I was an impressionable young fella, and I watched some Netflix documentaries and, you know, got convinced that cows were going to end the environment, all this stuff.
Well, I love that you tried all this stuff, man. I love that you were like doing the Gracie diet hardcore and
You've done your homework.
smoothies, and you were all in, man, and all this stuff. That's what I love about Clay Mayfield, you guys. It's like you are all in with freaking anything that you're in, man. And I really, really admire that. And it really, I think, reflects upon the results of everything you do in life.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I have to say that if it ever seems like I'm being disingenuous, like I have one stance and then I have an opposing mindset somewhere else, it's because I'm evolving as a person. And I hope that in 10 years, my views are different than they are now, because I always want to be malleable enough to evolve. But yeah, I left home and I watched some Netflix documentaries and felt like cows were going to end the world and that meat wasn't healthy for us. And all this, and no discredit to vegetarians or vegans, but it was not the way for me. I don't believe it's healthy for the environment or for us. And I was a vegetarian pretty hardcore for about 2 years. I was super on the Gracie diet and all this kind of stuff. And I looked like a vegetarian and I trained like a vegetarian. I felt like one. I was just not super strong. I got injured all the time. And then it was actually because I was traveling. I was going to Mexico City for a couple of tournaments, and all the tacos and street food, and, you know, it was all amazing. And I decided, okay, when I'm traveling, I'll eat anything because I want to experience the cultures. And then I got home and I ate a rotisserie chicken. I was like, all right. So I ended up just, you know, eating a normal lifestyle. And then now as an athlete, I pay very close attention to what I eat and my recovery. And I have just found that the more animal products that I eat, the better I feel. I usually start my day with beef liver. I would say probably 75% of my diet, maybe a little more, is meat, raw milk, cheese, and eggs. So animal products. And then I'm not carnivore. I don't think it's sustainable or healthy for us to be full carnivore. I've done it before. I don't like how I feel. I don't have enough glycogen, but I eat mostly animal products and fruit. And I eat a lot of sweet potatoes, and I eat some rice. And I don't sweat the small stuff. If I have, you know, like a mayonnaise or aioli or whatever, I don't sweat that too much, but I eat almost no vegetables. I love fruit and animal products, and that's the bee's knees. I could eat that till the cows come home.
Yeah. So what was it like, speaking of judo, I guess, watching Pixley throw Marigali?
I loved it. I mean, I'm a fan of Marigali. I'm a fan of all the new wave guys, but obviously, you know, I'm a fan of our team and of the upstarts. I think that had to be one of the biggest upsets in grappling history. I have incredible respect for Marigali and Danaher, but I was a little perturbed by the what I felt like was a lack of accountability for like acknowledging that someone beat Marigali. I felt like it was a lot of excuses about his shoulder and this and that, instead of just saying like, hey, good job, you won. A little curious to me, but no, I love to see it, and I hope Marigali's shoulder heals up and they get to have a rematch. And it was a banger. Goes out to show that I tell my athletes all the time in the training room, the belt doesn't mean shit. You go after that person like a honey badger on crack and just take their head off. It doesn't matter how many stripes they have. Doesn't matter what trophies on the wall. Like, their stripes are not going to fight that match for them. That person is right in front of you, and you take their head off.
Yeah, early days of Kolabate, this is what really shined it for me. Like when he was a blue belt, you know, and he was just destroying black belts, and you realized, you know, that it doesn't matter anymore, especially these kids. So speaking of kids and the youth, their talent now, and, you know, people like Cole and even the Rotolos back then. And what are you seeing with these kids? Is it next level, or has the evolution just exploded, or your thoughts on kids and probably what you see within your own academy as well?
Sure. I think there's tremendous development in the sport, and it's amazing to see Colabate and the Rotolos are classic examples of that. And I think it just comes down to years in the game. And so when you see the Rotolos and they've been training since they were 3 years old and they're 20 now, 19, 21, something like that. So it's someone who's been training for 17 years. I've been training for 16 or 17 years, but I started when I was 15. And so I just think that
It's a big
it's not
difference.
that, yeah, I don't think it's like the kids are better or anything like that. It's just the years of training. And when you've been training for 6 years, especially when you've been training 6 years or 10 years, and then you are at your prime, you're like in your early 20s, or I don't feel like I'm getting like too old. I think males hit their prime between 30 and 36. And so I feel like I'm just coming into my best years. But, if I started when I was 20, then by the time I've been training 16 years, I'm out of my prime. And this guy is like 19 in his prime. He's been training for 13 years. I think that's the compounding factor of just these kids and these kids programs starting so young, is they have that maturity of experience right in their prime. AOJ is a great example of that, just because of what a stellar feeder program their kids have. In our kids program, we have a great kids program. I'm a little biased, of course, but I'm proud of the job that our coaches do. We have a fantastic head kids coach named Foster Erie. Foster came to us when I think he had just graduated high school. He had done a couple years of jiu-jitsu and then taken time off to wrestle in high school. And then I found him right as he was graduating high school. So he started coaching for us when he was about 18. And he's never been a high-level competitor. He actually struggled with competition anxiety and so forth. And so he never enjoyed competing a lot in jiu-jitsu. And as he started coaching, that ended up just being a blessing in disguise, because he can relate to the kids so well when they get nervous for their matches or when they're acting out, because he struggles with those things himself, or he did. And so he's a tough purple belt. He's a good young man. He's about 22, 23 years old now. And he runs our kids program. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He goes and corners the kid. I mean, he flies down to Texas and LA and California or Florida and like corners them at the tournaments. It's part of his job. He runs all the advanced and beginner classes and disseminates the information to the other coaches. And so we're blessed to have a coaching staff that can fully devote to whatever slice of the pie that they're in. And that's part of the reason that we have the success with myself and the other, Coach Blake focusing on the varsity program, and Justin, the other coaches we have on the adult program, and then Foster and some of the coaches on there. So each person is delineated into their field of expertise. And so in our kids program, as well as our adult program, we put a tremendous focus in the judo and the wrestling. And in our advanced kids classes, there is a big focus on high level or high volume of rounds, and a lot of rounds and high rep drilling. And so it's just as we run the varsity program, we run the advanced kids classes the same way. And so, yeah, we have a great kids program and are able to devote a lot of attention to that. And we have a good number of youth world champions in the division as well.
I noticed that you guys have in-house tournaments. Can you talk about those? What do those look like? Is it strictly in-house or what?
Yeah. So we did this, we started doing it twice a year. We do it every January, February, and then every June or July. And we do it so that the kids can have a chance to compete without traveling. And then we do it for the adults, primarily just for the white belts. Sometimes we'll have a blue belt bracket or something like that, or, like a big match, but primarily it's just for the white belts in the gym and for the children. And we do it that way so that we can control the rule set and control the environment, and just give our competitors a way to get their toes wet, dip their toes in the water. And one of the things we do is, you could run an in-house tournament 100 different ways, but the way that we found efficacious is we don't have them fall into weight brackets. When we sign the adults up, for example, we divide them up by who's closest in weight, so they don't have to make weight, and then they round robin against each other person. So if these four guys come in, and we'll usually mix between the morning and the noon and the night classes, so they're not all fighting as people they train every day. And we have enough students that we're able to do that. And we also will invite people from other gyms. The white belts from some of the other gyms in town can come. So we truly like an intramural tournament a little bit.
Very
But
cool.
that way, if someone comes in and they haven't maybe done an IBJJF, or they haven't done a big tournament, they can go and be in a bracket with 3 or 4 other guys. And even if they lose their first match, they get 3 or 4 other matches. And so they get a lot of experience. And we keep the entry fee pretty affordable. And so it's just about getting the experience and the match time without having to travel. And we use it as a way to get them used to the competition environment with that less stress and less travel. And for the kids, they're not in a different environment and so forth.
Clay, I want to talk to you about the topic of seminars. I know that you've done some seminars. You've had seminars within your academy. What makes a great or bad seminar? Your thoughts on the benefits of seminars, and how can attendees get the most out of those things?
Man, I think seminars can be a great way to learn and spread jiu-jitsu. It depends a lot on who's teaching and how they're taught. When I teach a seminar, I travel quite a bit for competitions and teaching. And when I go to a gym and I do a seminar, I prefer to do it almost like running a practice. I like to connect with each person at the seminar as much as possible, which is hard to do when you're teaching in a big group environment like that. So what I will often do is I bring our varsity guys with me. So we'll do 3 or 4 of our guys, and we'll go to a gym and run a practice. So I'll teach an hour or hour and a half class. And then we do live training at the seminar usually. It depends on what the host prefers, but usually we'll do an hour or so of technique, and then we'll roll with everyone. And then at the end of the half an hour rolling or so, we'll circle up and do a Q&A at the end. So if anyone had any questions or saw something during the rolls or whatnot, they have a chance after the teaching to ask questions again. And what we'll often do is we'll go like, I'll try to roll with everyone at the seminar, and then at the end, we'll have a chance to talk about whatever happened.
And then can you give me a jiu-jitsu aha moment?
Yes, that's a great question. And the answer may be a little different than what you'd expect. An aha moment for me that was powerful was when I realized it's possible that I don't achieve my goals. And this happened recently over the course of this injury. And I mentioned that there was that kind of thought process of like, oh, I could just start coaching, I could do this and that. It's so important to have a self-belief and a truly visualizing and believing that you can accomplish something and having an intrinsic optimism. But I remember in the last year or two, I can't pin the exact moment, but I remember it occurring to me that it's possible that I don't achieve my goals. It's possible that I don't reach the pinnacle that I have always striven for. And the reason that I wouldn't do that is because of me, and not because I'm not good enough. I think I have a very talented potential, but I also see every day the shortcomings of if I don't do the things that I know that I could do, if I'm not disciplined with my recovery, if I don't really push myself with training, if I chose to smoke weed instead of doing cardio, there's all these forks in the road, and every day there's different forks, and it's like fractal geometry, the way it just expands. And your minute by minute, day by day choices are what make you a champion. One of the things that I preach to my athletes, and they'll hear me say this over and over again, is champions are not made on competition day. Champions are made in the training room. Champions are made by your minute by minute choices. When the tough guy looks at you, do you look away and find someone lighter to roll with, or do you take the champion and take your ass whooping? Do you get up and run in the morning, or do you get up and like hit snooze? Do you come home and jump in the sauna, or do you come home and grab the potato chips? It's all those minute by minute examples and choices that create your path. Realize that it's possible that I don't accomplish these things. And if that happens, the only reason it would happen is because the guy in the mirror. And that really shook me up and helped me lock my mindset back in and get dialed back in like I feel right now.
What's next for you, Clay?
Family. I have some major competition aspirations, and I'm training hard to accomplish those. I'm almost completely healed from this injury, just kind of getting back in shape. And so I am on fire for this next season. And that is very exciting. I just bought a house this week, and I've got a few more seasons left that I want to compete full time in. I'm 32. I feel amazing. I feel better than I ever have in my life. So I'm certainly not like slowing down for age, but I want to start having kids here before too long. And so I told my lady that we would go for the next few seasons, and then we have a certain time that we're going to stop and start dialing back a little bit and having kids and focusing more on the coaching side and competing a little bit less. So I've got our deal. It's a little malleable, but our deal was the rest of this year and then 4 more seasons, and we'll see if we hold out that long. But that's a big thing on my radar.
Well, Clay, I want to be respectful of your time. Was there anything else that you wanted to touch on that we didn't cover?
Man, I think we got over so many good conversation points. I appreciate all the insight and the questions you asked, and the platform that you provide to be able to share this with.
You bet. So where can the listeners get more information about you and everything that you're up to, man?
So my gym is just outside Nashville, Tennessee. It's down in Franklin, which is about 20 minutes south of the airport in Nashville. Everyone is welcome anytime. We don't charge drop-in fees. You're welcome to come train at any time and be a part of the program. I also have my personal Instagram, which is Clay Mayfield BJJ, and the gym Instagram, which is Triangle Franklin. But my personal Instagram is a great way to get a hold of me and stay in touch. I am very responsive to messages. So if someone listening to this or watching this has questions about something we talked about, or follows me and sees a technique they want a little more clarity on, or wants to set up a seminar or anything like that, then you can just shoot me a message on my direct Instagram. I'm pretty responsive there. And we have a YouTube channel from Triangle Academy. It's Triangle Franklin on YouTube, and we put different a building portfolio of our technique videos, some of our fundamentals, and also just insights into the training room. If you want to see what it is when we run a practice, how we structure our training, some of the things the Varsity crew does, follow us on the competition journeys and those vlogs and things like that, then you can find that on our Triangle Academy YouTube. And on an unrelated note to my jiu-jitsu endeavors, I try to keep all of my let's say religious and political and so forth opinions off of my social media, because I try very hard to be professional with that, and I have clients of all stripes, and I believe in being professional. But as I get a little older, I have a desire to express myself outside of just the professional jiu-jitsu environment, and so I'm in the process of starting a blog, and I'll be sharing thoughts on a wide variety of subjects, including jiu-jitsu and training, and expanding beyond that as well. And so I will be announcing the name and platform for that blog very soon.
Well, everyone, I am your host, Adolfo Ferranda. Thank you for watching and listening out there. Remember to go get your salt electrolytes and wear your dojo chimp geese and all the stuff. Check out our VIP offering, $2.99 a month, early access to episodes, and uncensored. Clay, it's been such an honor to talk to you, man. I could have went, easily 3-4 hours with you. I have so many more things I'd love to talk to you. We have to do a part two someday, brother.
Let's do a part two.
But it was a real honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for making the time. I really appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much.
Okay, guys. See you guys next time.